Hey, this video is Paintings of Chivalry Part 5, and it's from this book, Best Christian Art, by me, Pete Rogers. The first painting is St. Thomas Aquinas Before Christ. It's by Santi di Tito in 1593, and I love this painting because, you know, I really admired St. Thomas Aquinas, and it's the idea of he reconciled reason and faith, and he showed that they go together, and he made Aristotle more acceptable to the Catholic Church. And I can tell you, Aristotle, I agree with Ayn Rand, he's the greatest philosopher that ever lived. She described him as the atlas which holds the whole world of education on his back. Basically, the only hope for medicine and science is to have what I would call a biblical Aristotelian view of things. And what I mean by that is you have to place the truth at the top. You have to place the individual at the top, that you will value them. Because unless you do that, everything becomes a joke just for money. And there's a lot of people who don't really know anything, and they're going to say something like, oh, you know, science should be atheistic and objective. But they don't understand. If you don't have a Bible-based worldview, and if you don't think in this manner, you can't do anything. Look at clinical medicine right now. They're giving, you know, amphetamines to children for so-called attention deficit. They're poisoning children, okay? Now, you wouldn't do that if you cared about the child, you know, and everybody knows the data is wrong. So I'm not even going to go into that anymore, but I'm just telling you, I've been around medicine all my life. I've been around academics and education, and the reason everything is kind of gone into the garbage can and it's become a big joke is because they've removed God from the picture. And once you do that, there is no moral foundation and everything goes into the garbage can. So anyways, nice painting. I have this painting in my bathroom, okay, and I like it. Basically, Aquinas had done all this work, and he kind of goes before Christ. He says, I'm trying. You know, I wish I could have done more. And Christ said, you did fine. You're doing good. I like that painting. Okay, here is Salisbury Cathedral, and this one, you know, in England, 1825 was painted, and they're pretty nice, okay? You know, a Protestant cathedral, it's a nice attempt to copy the Catholics, and they do a pretty good job. The Catholic is more spontaneous, more creative, more wild and all over the place. That's why the French cathedrals are better than the English cathedrals, but it's still pretty nice, and it's still a nice painting. Okay, here is the great painting, The School of Athens by Raphael from 1511. And this is one of my all-time favorite paintings. I have this painting as well on my bathroom, a big poster in my bathroom. I put posters of things that I think are magnificent and great in my bathroom because they inspire me. I see them every day. If you want to be an artist, a painter, a writer, a YouTube video maker, filmmaker, whatever, you want to be around great creative work. It just motivates, inspires you, reminds you of what is great. And it kind of unifies a lot of things here. The great ideas of the Greek philosophers and scientists, the Roman architecture in the background, and its reconciliation with Christianity. The fact that this is in the Vatican, in the Stanza Signatura, the signature room. Okay, here's the quote by Ayn Rand. If there is a philosophical atlas who carries the whole of Western civilization on his shoulders, it is Aristotle. Whatever intellectual progress men have achieved rests on his achievements. Okay, and then Aristotle quote, ordinary words convey only what we already know. It is from metaphor that we can best get hold of something new. Ayn Rand again, Aristotle is the father of individualism. So there's Aristotle right there, and he's pointing down towards the ground, towards common sense, daily experience, empirical results. He says that's where we can best gain knowledge. Whereas Plato is pointing up to the sky, saying the idea of the perfect forms. Okay. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff. Obviously, it's a magnificent painting. You know, there's Michelangelo that Raphael added on the steps after he saw the magnificent beginnings of the Sistine Chapel. There's Diogenes, the homeless Greek philosopher, and there's a whole bunch more of them. There's Raphael himself. All these like famous Greeks you could think of. Archimedes. It goes on and on. Socrates talking to Alcibiades, etc. So it's a magnificent painting, and I love it. It's sort of this celebration of, I would even describe it as a syncretism of ancient Greeks, ancient Romans, and the Christian church, the Catholic church at this time. They can all be reconciled and go together, okay? That's a great thing. Okay, my thing auto-saves sometimes in the middle, so I have to wait a moment. But yeah, I love that painting. And the book The Light in the Cave by Arthur Herman is sort of about that painting, and it's a great book. It's the best philosophy book ever written. Okay, here's a painting called Night at the Crossroads by Viktor Vaznetsov from 1878. I think he's a Russian, and I kind of usually will put Russian artists on there because I think it's funny that, you know, the Russians had lots of good artists and writers in the 1800s, and then in the 1900s they stink, because once you change your country's philosophy, if it's a negative atheistic philosophy, all art and creation goes into the garbage can. Okay. Okay, here's a great painting. This is The Light of the World is Knocking, and Christ knocks on the door. Will you answer? He's not going to open the door himself. You got to open the door to him. This is by William Holman Hunt. He's one of the pre-Raphaelite brotherhood of painters in England, sort of the English Victorian Renaissance of the mid-1800s. And also, this is the one that John Ruskin gave the great speech celebrating the work of the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. The Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood is a group of English painters. Probably the best one would be John Everett Millais. And they wanted to go back to the idea of painting in a style like that was common before Raphael. They felt Raphael was sort of a pretty boy who emphasized how beautiful his paintings could be rather than the religious faith of the content. Obviously, Raphael was a magnificent painter, and you know, John Ruskin's a bit of a over-emotional dramatist, but it's still an awesome speech. It's the 1853 speech. If you type it into your YouTube browser, maybe I'll put a link below, the 1853 speech of John Ruskin. It's magnificent. He's the greatest art critic who ever lived, John Ruskin. It's a magnificent speech. But anyways, this is a great painting. I have this one in my bathroom as well. That's how much I like all this stuff. It's great stuff, you know. Get your mind in the right frame point of view. Okay, here's a scene from the Decameron painting by Salvatore Postiglione, and you know, the Decameron is when there was a plague, so people went off in the country and they told stories to each other, the men and the women, and it's sort of you know, a young romantic type of thing too as well. But you know, the paintings are beautiful. Italy's just great at making things beautiful. Italy's got, you know, sort of more style than any other country probably. It, you know, the way the Italians dress and their emotional gestures and stuff, and the way they talk, and their paintings are great. I grew up around a bunch of Italians. I like them a lot. Okay, here is Dante meets Beatrice for the first time. Beatrice, and you can see there's Florence in the background. It's just beautiful. And here's Will Durant. Every town in Italy has fathered genius and banished it. Yeah, Dante got banished from Florence. That was kind of sad. The Ghibellines supported the Holy Roman Emperor. The Guelphs supported the Pope, and they couldn't get along. But the whole Dante thing is pretty nice. The Divine Comedy. Okay. Got a couple more Dante paintings coming up here. Okay, here's Dante in exile, and a pretty sad painting. There's Dante. Looks like he doesn't know too many people. The stranger comes to town. He wrote his masterpiece, The Divine Comedy, when he's in exile. And a lot of the best books ever written come when the author is in exile or in prison or something like that. And that's the paradox that many of the best books have been written under these conditions where the author knows they'll probably never get any money for it. They just have a great creative idea in their mind and they want to express it. And if you look at, you know, Voltaire, when he was exiled to England, he wrote English letters, and they get that comparative point of view from being in another location. There's lots of books that are like that, you know, like Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. You know, Tocqueville on democracy when he came to USA. There's a whole bunch of them. Boethius when he was in prison. Okay, Cicero when he was exiled for a while. It goes on and on. That's a very common thing. And then people who feel exiled in some way often write great books. Okay, here's Dante. And he says, in middle age I found myself in a dark wood, and the path was lost. That's one of the beginning lines of the Divine Comedy. And so many of us feel that way with regard to our health. We're totally robust and healthy in our teens and 20s. And then in our 30s, we start working. That's when you're in middle age, when you start commuting to a job, get married, and have kids. And all of a sudden you're exhausted, you're tired, you're up with the kid, you're trying to do too much at work, and you get fat and all potentially sick. And then here is Dante again. Now he's with Virgil, his hero, his guide, Virgil, because, you know, he wanted to be a great writer. Virgil was a great writer, and he admired the ancient Romans. Virgil was the greatest writer of the ancient Romans. He wrote the Aeneas. of course. And so here they are at the gates of hell, and the sign above the gates of hell. This painting, I don't know if I could fit it all in. Let's see if I could fit it all in. Okay. This painting at the gates of hell, it says, "Abandon hope, all ye who enter." And so that's pretty much what conventional medicine says to patients with chronic disease. We could never cure you. All we could do is keep you on this pill for the rest of your life, keep taking your money. Okay, that was by William Blake. And then the last painting for today will be Dante, Divine Comedy. And this is Dante, behind him he's got, the path down to hell, purgatory, 7-story mountain, and then the great heaven above, and Florence over here. And there's a lot of symbolism and wisdom to come out of Dante. So I'll just share the painting for now. We'll talk more about Dante in the future lecture. So I hope that was interesting.